When The Batman first came out, I became a little bit obsessed with it. I went to a midnight screening on its opening night and proceeded to watch it like 10 more times over the next couple of weeks. Something in the Way by Nirvana took the top spot in my top songs of 2022 Spotify playlist. When it finally came out on Blu-ray, I watched it 10 more times. I was enraptured by it. I wrote about 10,000 articles about it, picking apart every tiny little detail.
Something in the way.
But I don't think it's a perfect movie by any means. The mystery plot revolves around really simple, easy riddles that a child could solve, but it somehow manages to also be way overcomplicated. The car chase is really cool, but it's also totally superfluous, leaving behind dozens of civilian deaths and millions in property damage just to question a person of interest. And I think it could have been at least half an hour shorter. After Carmine Falcone has been killed and the Riddler has been caught, there's no need for a big final battle where the whole of Gotham is flooded and an army of Riddler incel soldiers show up at a political event. But I'm more than willing to overlook a somewhat weak script because I absolutely adore everything else about the movie. I might not be 100% on board with Matt Reeves' screenwriting here, but he makes up for it and then some in the director's chair. I love the way he shows Batman's inexperience. This Batman gets his ass kicked, he stalls the Batmobile, he opens a parachute under a bridge like an idiot. It makes Batman seem a lot more human and less invincible. It was a great way to do an origin story without recycling the actual origin story. This isn't about how Bruce Wayne came to don the cowl, but it is about how he became Batman. I love the performances, they really elevate the material. Robert Pattinson manages to bring real depth and nuance to this sad emo white boy Bruce Wayne. Zoe Kravitz is the most captivating three-dimensional Catwoman we've seen since Michelle Pfeiffer. Colin Farrell channels a De Niro mobster performance as the Penguin.
Holy God, what are you showing me? His head. Come on!
And Jeffrey Wright's grizzled, hard-edged Jim Gordon wouldn't be out of place in Serpico or The French Connection. Michael Giacchino's moody score perfectly captures the brooding DC anti-hero. His main theme, a 4-note riff repeated over and over, gradually getting louder and louder, builds to Batman's arrival like the shark approaching in Jaws. Giacchino's sweeping orchestrations lend an impressive grandiosity to the whole movie. Greg Fraser's beautifully somber cinematography deeply immerses you in this gloomy vision of Gotham, and the reason the Batman looks so fucking good when so many modern Marvel movies look so bland is because Fraser relied on CGI as little as possible and used all the old school cinematic tricks to bring this Gotham to life. That's the main reason I kept coming back to this movie and watched it on a big screen as many times as I could. The gritty 70s style aesthetic is a feast for the eyes. A lot has been said about the influence of Seven and the way Reeves evokes Hitchcockian tropes and techniques, but the Batman primarily draws influence from some of the greatest films of the new Hollywood movement for a sumptuous 70s style Batman neo-noir. Opening from the killer's point of view on Halloween night is reminiscent of the opening of John Carpenter's Halloween. The Zodiac-inspired Riddler in The Batman has parallels with the Zodiac-inspired Scorpio Killer from Dirty Harry. And Gotham's corrupt cops could have been ripped from any number of seamy 70s cop movies. But The Batman draws from 3 70s classics in particular. I'm glad a Batman film finally drew inspiration from the greatest vigilante movie ever made. After the success of Death Wish kicked off a wave of vigilante thrillers, most of them seemed to endorse vigilantism as a valid form of law enforcement. Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver was the first one to explore the moral complexity of vigilantism, with a protagonist you're not supposed to root for, but some people do anyway. There are surface-level nods to Taxi Driver in The Batman, like Travis's retractable sleeve gun, but it also borrows one of the most crucial aspects of Taxi Driver's style. Scorsese gives the audience a window into Travis's fractured, disturbed mindset via his obsessive diary entries, expressed as voiceover narration. The Batman does the same thing with Bruce, who, like Travis, is an insomniac tortured by his past traumas, who shares all his darkest thoughts with the audience via voiceover. This whole technique was cribbed from Taxi Driver, and in Taxi Driver it was cribbed from Diary of a Country Priest. Of course, this isn't the first Batman-adjacent film to take influence from Taxi Driver, but the Batman didn't just copy the aesthetic of the Scorsese classic like Joker did. Reeves cherry-picked the most effective motifs that capture Travis's rage and loneliness and deep depression to round out his Batman in the same mold. Just like Taxi Driver views New York entirely through Travis's eyes, the Batman views Gotham entirely through Bruce's eyes. If The Dark Knight is Heat as a Batman movie, then The Batman is Chinatown as a Batman movie. The whole notion of a private detective doing a little digging and finding that his entire city is laced with corruption harks back to Roman Polanski's neo-noir masterpiece. I feel icky talking about Polanski, for obvious reasons, he's a really bad egg, but you can't understate Chinatown's influence on the last 50 years of American cinema.
Forget it, Jake. It's Sherman Oaks.
Chinatown is notorious for its hauntingly fucked up twist. It turns out Evelyn Mulwray is her sister's mother because her dad raped her when she was a teenager, which is just about the most horrible thing that ever happened in a movie. Almost as horrible as the actual crimes committed by Roman Polanski. The Batman has a similar paternal plot twist.
I want to know why a guy like Falcone would owe you anything.
Because he's my father!
It's nowhere near as dark and depraved as Chinatown's twist, but it is pretty dark. Selina Kyle is so desperate to kill Carmine Falcone because he's her illegitimate father and he murdered her mother. The love stories are usually the worst part of Batman films, but I really love Batman and Catwoman's romance in this movie. It's not a glossy, idealized Hollywood romance. It's really awkward, which is a lot closer to my personal experiences with romance than, like, Notting Hill. Batman in this movie is so socially anxious that he can hardly even talk to girls, which might be why I related to him so much. And Catwoman is much more free-spirited and sees Batman as like a lost puppy. This dynamic evokes Donald Sutherland and Jane Fonda's dynamic as a detective and a person of interest turned co-crime fighter turned love interest in Alan J. Pakula's classic crime thriller Klute. Klute was the first chapter in Pakula's unofficial political paranoia trilogy, soon followed by The Parallax View and All the President's Men. Sutherland's John Klute is a small-town cop out of his depth in the big city, while Fonda's Bree Daniels is a street-smart sex worker who's gutsier and more in touch with the city's underworld than the detective himself. Bree is a classic whore with a heart of gold, but she transcends that tired trope. She's flawed yet relatable. She's fierce yet vulnerable. She's not a one-dimensional archetype who serves the male lead's journey. If anything, he serves hers. Like Selina, Bree reluctantly cooperates with the investigation. She does most of the talking since her co-star is a man of few words, and eventually an unlikely romance blossoms between the two. Ultimately, the relationship between these two characters is much more interesting than the missing persons case that brings them together. There's a basic storytelling rule that the thing that seems the most important at the beginning shouldn't really matter by the end, and the thing that seems the least important at the beginning ends up taking the spotlight. Both Klute and the Batman adhere to this rule by setting up a hard-boiled crime story and focusing on the burgeoning romance that springs out of it.
You got a lot of cats.
Never think about strays.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.